Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. In today's video, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the all-new 2020 Nissan Versa. In this video, I'll be giving you all a complete walkthrough of the entire car, from the engine to the trunk and everything in between. I'll of course take it on a thorough drive, we'll talk about options, pricing between the different trim levels, and more. And so, without further ado, let's go ahead and hop on in, start her up, and let her run. The 2020 Versa is offered in 8 different colors, a handful of which are premium paint options that cost an extra $395. One of those options is shown here. It's called Monarch Orange Metallic. It's very pretty in the sun. On all trim levels, keyless entry and push-button ignition does come standard, but on the SR, you also get a smart key system. So as long as you have the key fob in your pocket, you can lock and unlock the car by just using the buttons on the driver and passenger side door handles. Inside, with the base S, you have standard charcoal upholstery. The SV gets a combination of charcoal and graphite, while the SR gets a specific charcoal sport interior that has various orange accent pieces, as well as stitching. The SR also gets remote start. As far as pricing, the Versa is offered in 3 different trim levels. The S, which is the entry model, starts at $14,730 with a 5-speed manual transmission. If you want the S with a CVT, you gotta come up with $16,400. The SV is one tick above that, and it starts at $17,640, while this example, the SR, starts at $18,240. Of course, those prices are before destination charges, which in this case is $895. Now this example, of course, is fitted with a bunch of optional extras. There's only one primary optional package, and that's the SR Convenience Package. I'll talk about that a little bit later. This one also has a lot of really cool accessories attached to it, like LED running lights that light up the ground when you open the doors at night, LED interior ambient lighting, just all sorts of stuff. Total MSRP for what you see here, including destination, is $21,885. In order to start, all you have to do is make sure you have the key fob within the interior, then simply put your foot on the brake and hit the console mounted button to go. For 2020, the Versa enters its 3rd generation in a major way. Nissan really has gone leaps and bounds to create a car that offers an unprecedented amount of standard convenience and safety features that you wouldn't typically expect to find in the compact or subcompact segment. I mean, there really is a lot of stuff packed into this car. And not just the SR. The SR is the top of the line trim, but even the base S has a bunch of driver assistance technologies, a standard touchscreen, and all sorts of stuff. It's a really nice package overall. So let's kick things off by talking about the powertrain. The 2020 Versa is powered by an all-new Gen 3 1.6-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder. It produces 122 horsepower at 6,300 RPM and 114 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. Those are increases of 13 horsepower and 7 pound-feet of torque over the last generation. More power is always nice, but it's not always needed, and that's kind of the case with the new Versa. Let's be honest. People are not buying a Versa because of its performance capabilities. This car is about value and fuel economy, and while this engine does benefit from a lot of advanced design techniques, it's all to benefit fuel economy as well as reduce emissions. Of course, the engine is designed using aluminum for the block and head. There's double overhead camshafts, 4 valves per cylinder, and dual continuous variable valve timing. Fuel is delivered by sequential multi-port injection, but this Gen 3 engine employs a new dual injector setup, which is supposed to burn cleaner and use less fuel than a conventional setup. The compression ratio is 10.4 to 1. Other advanced design techniques include a spray-coated bore cylinder block, high thermal conductivity piston rings, and sodium-filled exhaust valves. Like I mentioned earlier, as far as transmissions are concerned, if you want a 5-speed manual transmission, the only option is the entry-level Versa S. All the other trim levels come standard with a revised version of Nissan's Xtronic continuously variable transmission. For this application, the design of the CVT is actually lighter than before. It also features revised D-step logic control for improved shift feel and responsiveness, as well as a 20% wider gear range to help improve both acceleration and fuel economy. When placing the car into reverse, a backup camera automatically appears on the 7-inch screen in the dash. It features adaptive guidance lines, and there's also rear parking sensors. If you look on the back of the shifter, there's a little button. If you press it while you're in drive, it activates somewhat of a sport mode, so it makes things a bit more responsive and lively. Behind drive, you have the transmission's low position. You would only use this for extra engine braking, like going down steep hills, if you're going up steep grades or approaching a sharp bend. It's really not used other than just engine braking. Let's be honest, the Versa is not a fast car. It's not marketed to be a fast car, and anybody actually interested in purchasing a fast car is not going to be cross-shopping a Nissan Versa. So now that we got that out of the way, I've driven this thing quite a lot, on the highway, through the back roads, through the city, and all of that good stuff, and I never really once thought that the car was really lacking in power. Again, more power is always nice, but it's not always needed. I felt like this had plenty for passing power on the highway. I feel like it gets up and goes in the city, just as quickly as any, reasonable person would want. And I think a lot of the way the engine and the car performs has to do with this revised CVT. Now, full disclosure, I'm not a huge fan of CVTs. I never have been, but I can tell that this one it feels more responsive. Like it drives more like a conventional automatic than CVTs that I've experienced in the past. Like a CVT is a continuously variable transmission. It doesn't have fixed ratios. So instead of having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 gears, it's constantly varying the ratio depending on how you're driving to maximize, the balance between power and efficiency. Now, when you're on the highway cruising 70, 75, this engine is only revving at maybe 1800, 1700 RPM. It's really low, and that's part of the reason why you get upwards of 40 miles to a gallon on the highway. But when you hit the gas, it's more responsive than I'm used to. And when you're driving it a little bit harder, it shifts. So it's a really neat setup. People are gonna either love or hate the CVT no matter what. But for this car and all the changes that they did to it, I'm really happy with it. It's pretty sweet. Mileage estimates between the 5-speed manual and the CVT differ quite a bit. With the CVT, you can expect the range of 32 miles per gallon in the city and 40 miles per gallon on the highway, with a combined average of 35 miles per gallon. With the manual, it's quite a bit less. 27 miles per gallon in the city, 35 miles per gallon on the highway, and an average of 30 miles per gallon. The Versa carries a 10.8 gallon fuel tank and runs on regular unleaded. There's also a nice little fuel cap holder right there. One thing that really impresses me about the Versa is just how many standard active and passive safety features are included on this thing. You have 10 airbags located throughout the interior, including dual-stage front airbags, knee airbags for both the driver and front passenger, seat-mounted side airbags for the front and rear, as well as side curtain airbags for the front and rear. Lots of protection. There's also a ton of driver assistance tech, even on the base S. Things like frontal collision warning with pedestrian detection, automatic high beam assist, lane departure warning, and rear automatic braking. On the SV and SR, you can also opt for a driver alert system as well as blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert. If you decide to go for the SR, you also have the option of the convenience package, which groups adaptive cruise control with 2-stage heated front seats. That's a lot of stuff for this price point. The Versa comes standard with a 7-inch touchscreen radio that has AM/FM radio, as well as hands-free Bluetooth connectivity, so telephone and audio streaming. With the SV and SR, you get an upgraded Nissan Connect system, which is the same size. It just has a little bit more stuff going on, like SiriusXM satellite radio, as well as smartphone integration technologies like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So if you have a compatible smartphone, you can port in navigation as well as the ability to use compatible apps. The S and the SV have a basic 4-speaker setup, while the SR has a 6-speaker setup. It's not the most powerful thing in the world, but for rock and electronic music and stuff, it's got a nice little punch. The climate control system is single zone, but instead of having manual controls, the SR comes standard with an automatic system. Towards the front of the center console, we have a modest amount of storage, just big enough to set a smartphone in there. You can also see a little lit up button to the far right for the optional interior ambient lighting system. You can turn them on or off or select between quite a range of colors. To the top left, you have a USB port, an auxiliary input, and a 12-volt power outlet. The Versa actually has 3 USB ports throughout the interior. One up here that charges your phone and connects to the infotainment system, as well as 2 in the rear seat that only charge devices. In the middle, you have a manual parking brake, a little storage tray in the front, 2 cup holders. In the back, an armrest does come standard on the SV and SR, but this is an optional armrest. This one has a good bit of storage inside, as well as some change storage, little clip up top. This is a $300 option. Other points of storage throughout the interior include a generous glove box, as well as door pockets with water bottle holders and a small cubby on the far left-hand side of the dash. Alright, before we move on, let's talk about this interior a bit more. Keeping in mind that this is more or less an economy car, I think Nissan's done a really good job with giving off a high-quality feel and still being able to keep the car at a competitive price point. There's padded material across the middle sections of the doors, as well as the center section of the dash. I really like the color accent stitching. That's a nice touch. You have some satin silver detailing, some high gloss black. Overall, it looks really nice. The doors close with a nice soft thud. There's no rattles, everything feels generally solid, and for the most part, it's pretty quiet out on the road. Plus, you got all of these controls on the steering wheel, which for the most part are standard across the board. Cruise control, hands-free telephone, and radio commands. The steering wheel is wrapped in leather in the SR, and the other trims, it's a urethane material, so this is definitely a nice upgrade. Features the accent stitching, grip bolsters up top. The shifter is also wrapped in leather. One of my favorite features included on the SV and SR is the upgraded instrument cluster. Instead of having a plain analog tachometer, you have a digital tachometer and a very comprehensive driver's information system. So, obviously, you have the tach like you see here, but then you go through the different menus, radio, economy data, information like trip computer, temperature, driving aids, tire pressure, various warnings, as well as all of the system settings. There's a frameless auto-dimming rearview mirror with garage home link built into the bottom, a manual tilt telescoping steering wheel, as well as power windows, locks, mirrors, and a fully automatic driver's window. The seats are manually adjustable, 6-way for the driver's seat, 4-way for the passenger seat. The difference on the driver's side is extra height adjustment. There's no adjustable lumbar, but to be honest, the seats have a pretty good amount of support just as they are. Being heated is also really nice. If you haven't tried heated cloth seats, you are definitely missing out. The headrests and seat belts are also adjustable. The trunk is huge. It's a wide opening, and you can hold up to 15 cubic feet worth of stuff. The load floor is flat, and the lift-over height is very low. Quite practical. Underneath the trunk floor, you have a temporary spare tire. If you needed some extra cargo space, you can always fold down the 60-40 split back seat and expand the space all the way to the front. Before we check out the exterior, let's go ahead and flip on the lights. The SR actually has full LED headlamps, both high and low beam. You also have fog lamps. In my opinion, Nissan has been on a roll lately. They've been doing a complete overhaul of their sedan lineup. The only one that hasn't been totally overhauled was the Maxima. I just put up one of those the other day. That car just came out in 2016. It was refreshed for 19, so it's soldiering on a little bit more. But we have the new Altima, we have the Sentra, and we have the Versa. The Versa is probably the most unique out of all three of those, because if you don't have a whole lot of money to spend, or you're trying to stay under a certain budget in the new car market, this is proof that you no longer have to settle for something boring. The days of the traditional Econo box are gone. This thing is super stylish. Just it looks and it feels premium to a degree. Like, take into consideration like what this car buys you versus, you know, some of the larger competitors out there, or even some of the competitors in this segment. Like, this is a really compelling package. The SR, for example, you have the LED headlamps up front. That's super cool. The fact that all the models come with automatic high beams is really cool. I mean, I'm not going to go into all of the tech stuff again, but with the SR, it's not only the top of the line package with all of the bells and whistles, it's also the sportier looking package. So you have a dark chrome grille up front, blacked out mirrors, a body color spoiler out back, you have body colored door handles, and of course, upgraded wheels. It looks really nice. Like, when you look at this from afar, I mean, you wouldn't think that it's something cheap. And I think Nissan, really hit the nail on the head with that. As far as the suspension, the Versa uses an independent strut-type front suspension with a 21mm stabilizer bar. The rear suspension is comprised of a torsion beam, and at all four corners, you have twin-tube shock absorbers. The overall suspension design really hasn't changed a whole lot. The primary changes include a stiffer beam design out back, polyurethane bump stops, but they've actually been able to reduce body roll tendencies by a pretty significant degree, so it stays pretty flat through the corners. It actually handles a lot better. It's more fun than you would expect for a compact, subcompact car. But they've also been able to improve crosswind stability, which that's something that you would notice more on the highway by having a larger footprint. The wheels have been pushed out a little bit more compared to the last Versa. You have different tire options now. They've also improved aerodynamics. Overall coefficient of drag is just 0.29, so this thing slips through the wind pretty easily, and that's one of the reasons why it's so quiet. But they've also extended the chin spoiler up front, which they claim is one of the things that improve crosswind stability, so that's pretty cool. Overall, I really like how this thing drives. It drives a lot better than I was expecting it to. Something that starts out at like 14,000, there's only so much you can expect of, how it's going to drive, if it's going to ride rough, or if it's going to feel like a little tin can, and this doesn't feel like any of that. It honestly, like I said, it feels nicer than the price point suggests. It rides good, it's pretty fun, it handles good, it's very smooth on the highway. Like, if you go test drive one, I think you'll agree. It's a very nice ride. Before I wrap this video up, let's check out the back seat. The middle of the doors, just like the front, do have padded material. There's a single water bottle holder down below. And because the new Versa is a little bit bigger, ingress and egress is certainly improved over the previous generation. I sat the front seat to a comfortable seating position I would normally sit at. So now let's climb on in and check out space. So I'm 5'10". First thing I can tell you is that, of course, being a smaller car, it is going to be a tighter back seat. I do have a little bit of legroom to spare, maybe an inch and a half or so. I'd probably say about the same in headspace. Overall visibility is pretty good. You have the small windows up front just ahead of the mirrors, fairly narrow B-pillars, and the C-pillars aren't too wide. The Versa can seat up to 5. There's 3 fixed headrests up top. There's no fold-down armrest. However, you're probably going to have a hard time sitting 3 full-size adults back here because the middle is definitely a bit tight. Probably best left to smaller children. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the in-depth look at the 2020 Nissan Versa. Be sure to stay tuned next time, leave a like, and subscribe today if you haven't already, because there's a lot more content where that came from, not just with the car tours, but the projects as well. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.